Hi, this is Eternal King here, bringing you another LOR video today. So last night, and well, more so like last afternoon, Eternal was hopping, right? You know, you always pay attention when like the player queue for Eternal specifically is doing very well, because traditionally speaking, there aren't that many Eternal players running around the servers at a given time, but it was very popular yesterday on Saturday. And I think a lot of that has to do with people trying to challenge the Eternal format master. So I'll tell you how those games went. We played a ton of different games. We played meme decks. We played, you know, a little bit of top tier mixed in there, and then some straight up aggro. And we basically won something like 10 games straight in a row, which is pretty normal for me for the most part. So, of course, we're playing my OG Azir Aurelia, obviously an exceptionally good deck. The version of the deck that you see tracked on Runeterra AR right now is more spell responsive. Meanwhile, mine is a little more, it's just more straightforward Blade Dance stuff, and not being as concerned about, like, having a deny in there or having a 2-mana bounce in there. Like, I tend to just, like, go for it, right? Full commitment plays, that's typically what I do. Kind of learning that from Swim, and my Azir Aurelia reflects that, where it's like 10 1-drops to start things off, and then the full Emperor's Dais, Emperor's Army mix, and then everything else you would kind of expect, including Domination and Blossoming Blade. Like, sometimes these things get cut, and then they kind of ratio in more spells, that sort of thing. Mine's just full commitment on the archetype, and yeah. Deck tracker shows that yesterday it won 5 games in a row at 100% win rate. So again, no real issues with my OG construction of Azir Aurelia from 5 months ago. It still performs just as well as it used to. Absolutely. Talking about some of the other decks that were doing exceptionally well. I did find that it was the spell-based aggro decks instead of the creature-based aggro decks. So stuff like traditional dumb Shadowburn, right? Phantom Prankster, Neverglade Collector, Use Cast Salesman, plus some, a bunch of burn spells and Doom Beast and one Haunted Relic in there. Ballistic Bot, Boom Crew Rookie, Teemo, Stygian Onlooker, Elise, So a slightly more of a spell-focused burn shell, or at least using creatures that are not designed to swing and are instead designed to slowly burn the opponent out. And that turned out to be effective. And then we also have Draven Riven. I think Draven Riven was like surprisingly performing quite well for its games. So of course, your Blade Squire, your Rune Squire, your Rune Weaver, your Draven, burn heavy finish to kind of, just in case certain things get answered. But yeah, it functions. It was performing quite well, and a lot of that just has to do with a lot of standard players not being familiar with some of these Eternal tools. The amount of burn that you can put out in the Eternal format being one example. Combo-based win cons like fully optimized Azir Aurelia being another example. And then the other deck that was also winning was, good old-fashioned Swim Elusive. So, like, again, this is kind of a meme deck in my eye. But for whatever reason, when I ratioed it like this, and it did take some tweaking, it was actually winning games. So, excuse me, a little something on my chest today. So yeah, it was winning games, and that's just like good performance, right? Like, I was basically playing against a wide variety of Masters emblemed players, top tier Masters players or players with a lot of experience in the game. And for whatever reason, the burn aggro, the elusives, whether it's the Shadow Burn or the PNZ Noxus Burn, the Azir Aurelia, we basically just ran the table. We played some memes, like, don't get me wrong. We were playing some Transform. Transform is definitely a meme deck, where you use things like Curious Changeling to try to duplicate either Teeny Dactyl or Spotted Toad. Like, don't play this, but like it was funny because at one point I had 3 Spotted Toads flip at the same time, and then I board wiped their board that way. It's like the least mana efficient board wipe in the history of LOR. But we did actually manage to do that, so that was kind of funny. It's like the 3 Toad flip with the Curious Changeling setup. But yeah, like don't play this. And then, yeah, we did like 1 game of Deep and 1 game of Lurk, and I'm just bad at Deep and Lurk. Like, I'm going to be honest, there are certain archetypes, even with the amount of time that I played this game, that like in Eternal, I'm just like, I don't know how to play these decks. That's why my decks are designed to be winnable by me, right? Like, the Rise deck was built for me. My Burn aggro decks I've always held on to, and they're designed by me. And they're very different from, like, what's actually meta for Eternal right now. If you look at, like, what's meta for Eternal, it's actually all creature-based aggro with no burn. So it's like the opposite of like what I'm suggesting. So like it's all like Jury Rigs and Reborn Grenadiers and creature spam, creature spam, creature spam, creature spam, and like that's the meta Jinx Draven deck. Very similar to Ziggs Poppy. And the reality is that I think that's probably the bad play. I think you'll have a lot more fun in Eternal right now as an aggro player if you're not playing creature-based aggro. So no Annie Jin, because Annie Jin is very creature-focused. No Jinx Draven, very creature-focused. And no Ziggs Poppy, because that's very creature-focused. Instead, I would suggest looking at old versions of Noxus and P and Z Burn, and old versions of Shadow P and Z Burn, for this particular meta, specifically. And I think you're going to have a better time. Now, obviously, there are more competitive constructions of these decks. I like to keep them a little flavorful for fun, but a lot of people will drop these, and then they'll just run like more burn cards. And then in the case of Riven, you know, sometimes they don't run the 2-mana burst card to, you know, empower their Rivens or swing for more damage at burst speed. But honestly, like, the whole point of this video is just like when it comes to Eternal, don't be afraid to explore older archetypes. If you find that creature-based aggro is not working, whether it is Pirate aggro, whether it is Jinx Draven, whether it is Ziggs Poppy, then don't forget that there are versions of aggro that are like far more spell-focused. And that could be things like Elusive Spam with Burst, it could be things like PNZ Noxus Burn aggro, or it could be Shadow PNZ Burn aggro. These older versions are very different. They almost require a lot more healing to deal with, and they almost require denies to deal with. And then obviously in the case of Azir Aurelia, you need the hard landmark removal, or the hard explore package to deal with Azir Aurelia. So, again, if you go to Runeterra AR, I often post my deck stats there. I tend to do very, very well. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Shadow PNZ Burn is, you know, one of my top decks for the format, because, you know, it has counters, and the same thing with Driven Raven. But, like, man, if people aren't prepped for it, like, you're absolutely going to run the table. Like, again, 10 wins in a row with high commitment spell-based win cons in Eternal right now against top Masters players. Like, that's just insane, right? Like, that's basically just, again, you're just snow plowing through them, to use like a Canadian metaphor. Like, I'm like a Canadian moose, and I'm just ramming through all these high-level Masters players in this format, thanks to a willingness to play lists that are spell-based win conditions and high commitment win conditions. So the big thing you'll notice when I play a burn aggro deck optimally is that as soon as I see lethal value, I just go for it. So for example, if you have lethal value of like Mystic Shot, or a Mystic Shot, Get Excited, just give her, right? Like, as soon as you have priority, just give her, because there are going to be very few decks that people are running right now that are going to have the necessary answers to deal with that approach. So like Cosmic Youngling is not popular in Eternal right now, but it's a very good anti-aggro card, burn aggro card specifically. Guiding Touch is not popular in Eternal right now. And then the same thing with Star Shaping. And then when you go to Ionia, I'm one of the few weirdos who's running proper healing in Ionia, whether it is the heal 3, draw 2, or of course Ritual of Renewal. I've gone over that deck a million times, so I'm not going to bother. You know what I'm talking about. Is essentially like cycling healing power. So, basically when the opponent tries to decimate you for 4 health, you are spending 4 mana at burst speed to heal that 4, come out ahead on mana, and also cycling to draw 1, right? So like it's basically a better version of like a deny in the case of burn aggro, right? So like they commit the double Mystic Shot for lethal. You're just like Ritual Renewal. Okay, keep playing your hand out. No big deal. So that's why I run a lot of healing in my Rise deck, is because literally I've been playing this game long enough to know that burn aggro decks exist and that they are exceptionally powerful, even if they are off meta, which they definitely are right now. Burn aggro is off meta, but it is absolutely a showstopper. We won't be able to get proper ladder stats until next season, but the reason why burn aggro wasn't popular is because Ziggs Poppy was just better. It would just spam more stuff on the board faster, and that meant that the burn aggro deck couldn't get the opponent into lethal range. But because Ziggs Poppy's really bad right now, relatively speaking, it's down to like 57% or something, which we've never seen Ziggs Poppy drop that low. Creature-based aggro is a terrible idea. Just don't do it. Don't do creature aggro. So Annie Jin or Ziggs Poppy, just instead go full in on the burn concept as hardcore as you can, and overall you're going to find you're having a better time. This is Eternal King, signing out.